Japan was defeated in 1945, Italy surrendered in September 1943, and Germany surrendered unconditionally in May 1945, ending the war in Europe. Japan was the only country participating in the Triple Alliance that did not surrender. At the Yalta Conference in February 1945, as Germany's post-war handling and countermeasures against Japan were discussed, an atmosphere of seeking an end to the war began to grow within the Japanese ruling class. Cautious pacification wing bureaucrats emerged. However, the army side strongly insisted on continuing the war even in the obviously unfavorable situation. In April 1945, when Okinawa finally came into the hands of the US military, Kantaro Suzuki, who advocated for an honorable peace, became prime minister. For the Japanese ruling class facing the end of the war, whether they were hardliners or favored pacification, the key was to be able to maintain the imperial system. At that time, the Japanese ruling class feared the abolition of the imperial system by the victorious country. After Japan's defeat in the war, the ruling class could not imagine any method other than the unification of the people using the authority of the emperor.
On July 26, 1945, the Potsdam Declaration by the United States, China, Britain, and the Soviet Union demanded that Japan either surrender unconditionally or face total destruction.
The Allied powers also emphasized that the authority and influence of those who instigated and misled the Japanese people to engage in world domination must be forever and completely eliminated.
United States President Truman was confident that this formidable new weapon, even though it was only 2 atomic bombs, would be a decisive force to bring Japan to surrender.
When the Potsdam Declaration was announced, the pacificationists were also intimidated by the fact that unconditional surrender did not clarify the maintenance of national prestige.
The Japanese army leadership stubbornly held on, saying they could not be humiliated and admit defeat. In response, Prime Minister Suzuki resolutely declared to the Japanese people that he would ignore the Potsdam Declaration and fight until victory. Then, the United States loaded B-29 strategic bombers with atomic bombs, a new and unknown weapon, and dropped one on Hiroshima on August 6, 1945, and one on Nagasaki on August 9th. On Monday, August 6, 1945, US President Henry Truman ordered the atomic bomb, Little Boy, to be dropped on Hiroshima, and 3 days later, on August 9th, Fan Man was dropped on Nagasaki. The two cities were reduced to complete ruins in an instant by these formidable weapons that mankind had never used before. In the first 2 to 4 months after the atomic bomb was dropped, between 90,000 and 166,000 people died in Hiroshima, and between 60,000 and 80,000 people died in Nagasaki. Due to the wrong choice of the Japanese leadership, many innocent Japanese people had to lose their lives. If the outcome of the Potsdam Conference had been accepted, the sacrifice of innocent lives would have been prevented. The buildings destroyed by the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima during World War II remained in ruins, and controversy over demolition and preservation continued, but it was decided to preserve them.
The ruined buildings, with only their bare steel frames, became a symbol of the damage caused by the atomic bombing and were designated as a World Heritage Site by UNESCO in 1996. On August 8, the Soviet Union declared war on Japan, and in the early morning of the 9th, the Soviet army rushed into Manchuria.
Until then, Japan had established a puppet state called the State of Manchuria in Manchuria, China, and was managing the last emperor of the Qing dynasty, Henry Pui, by controlling the state from behind. Japan, which had not been aware of the Soviet Union's participation in the war until then, began to panic at the Soviet invasion of Manchuria.
In the middle of the night on August 9, a meeting of Supreme War leaders was held in a small air raid shelter in Tokyo. The humid August heat in the conference room in the air raid shelter was suffocating. The attendees rose from their seats and greeted the emperor with an upright posture as the emperor entered the meeting room and sat in the chair of the head of state.
Prime Minister Suzuki solemnly and firmly ordered the Chief Cabinet Secretary to read the Potsdam Declaration to the attendees. When Prime Minister Suzuki asked the Togo Foreign Minister for his opinion, Togo urged him to accept the declaration without further delay if he obtained assurances that the emperor's status and throne would be respected.
However, the military stubbornly maintained their opposition despite the great disaster. Army Minister General Enemy jumped up and strongly insisted the Japanese people fight to the end. General Umezu agreed with the enemy's opinion, saying that Japan was still superior to the enemy, and that surrendering unconditionally now would only tarnish the honor of the Japanese who died heroically. The Navy Chief of Staff Admiral Toyoda also insisted on continuing the war. All 11 participants were given the opportunity to express their opinions. In fact, these thoughts and opinions of the Japanese military leadership did not respect the lives of their people at all, and thought them as insignificant as insects. At 2 a.m. on Friday, August 10th, the Japanese emperor quietly began to speak. Despite everyone's best efforts, the war situation has not developed further in our favor. Obviously, the people are no longer able to wage war, and their ability to defend all our coasts is questionable. The time has come to endure the intolerable. Nevertheless, I authorize the proposal to accept the Allied Declaration on the basis outlined by the Foreign Minister. Emperor Hirohito rose from his seat and slowly walked out of the air raid shelter. After the emperor left, in silence, the participants took out white handkerchiefs and wiped the sweat from their foreheads and tears from their faces. Angry moans and sobs quietly flowed from all corners of a small air raid shelter. Prime Minister Suzuki opened his mouth. Your Majesty's decision must also be the final decision of this meeting. No one objected. By the decision of the Emperor, the condition of surrender would guarantee the position of the Emperor. A request was made to the Allied powers for surrender under the condition of maintaining the Imperial system, but it was rejected. On August 14th, a Supreme Council meeting was again held in the air raid shelter.
The stubborn soldiers resisted the surrender to the end and recklessly insisted that they would die defending their homeland, Japan. After all opinions were presented, Emperor Hirohito decided to surrender unconditionally with the words, "I have come to believe that continuing the war will only result in continuing destruction."
The next day, August 15th, the emperor's trembling voice announcing unconditional surrender in accordance with the Potsdam Declaration resonated throughout the country through broadcasts. Knowing that the decision to surrender was irreversible, Army Minister Anami Korekika chose an honorable death by committing harakiri.
Countless Japanese opted to commit suicide. Among them, Vice Admiral Onishi, who had organized the Kamikaze Commando, was also included in the seppuku suicide. Vice Admiral Onishi, who was responsible for issuing the order, committed seppuku. The emperor had to witness 10 young soldiers commit seppuku suicide in his royal chambers.
In this way, Japan's military culture of unconditional loyalty to the country and obeying order must have been a very positive force in Japan's post-war recovery and at one time achieving the second largest economy in the world. In any case, the Japanese people and country are pretty mighty in the world. I hope their ability should be used peacefully for all mankind in the future. Thank you for watching the video, Emperor Hirohito's surrender provided by history and current events. I'm Rebecca, Mia, Katie, Leah, and Tony have contributed so far as narrators. Thank you.